How was it like to get your first break in teaching?
Well, while I was studying in university, everybody was talking about there's a big shortage of teachers, so I was pretty confident. But once I graduated and started to apply for jobs, things were not as easy as I imagined.
How many attempts did you take before you got that score?
Eventually, well, I got it, but altogether it took me 14 times to get that score I needed.
You moved on from visitor visa to resident visa. So tell us about your biggest achievement as an immigrant in New Zealand. Hi Ramai, and welcome to the very first episode of A Home Away from Home, where I talk to immigrants and their journey so far in New Zealand, how they settled here and what were the challenges they faced. I'm Alia Naseem, and joining me today is a primary school teacher. Welcome, Camellia. A very welcome to the show.
Kia ora, Alia. Thanks for inviting me to the show.
Pleasure. So, Camellia, when did you first arrive in New Zealand? And tell us a little bit about your journey from China to New Zealand.
Well, the first time I came to New Zealand was the beginning of 2016. Me and my partner came over as visitors. I had a very short taste of this country. Then I went back to China, and he stayed here to start his study. Then 6 months later, I officially moved to New Zealand.
Oh, that's good. So what was the hardest part of moving here?
Well, settling down, I'd say the hardest part is when I just got here. It took me a while to find where the local Asian supermarket, to meet some friends who share the same cultural background with me. So for that period of time, I feel a bit culturally isolated. Of course, there was a honeymoon period when I feel everything was just so amazing, so exciting. I was curious. But after that period, and before I found my people, my community, I just feel really, really lonely.
We are all aware of the honeymoon period and how things get difficult after that, but you've done a commendable job. You said you've been here since 2016, so that's 7 years.
Yes.
Okay. Did you have to do any English test to come over to New Zealand and work as a teacher here?
To become a registered teacher in New Zealand as a non-English native speaker, I had to sit in this English test called IELTS. And my band score has to pass 7, and each module, listening, speaking, writing, and reading, has to pass 7 as well. So, well, initially I was quite confident with my English because I studied English back in China in uni. So very quickly I passed my listening, reading, and speaking. I got really high score, but writing took me a long time.
Yeah. Do you mind sharing with the viewers how many attempts did you take before you got that score?
Of course. So eventually, well, I got it, but altogether it took me 14 times to get that score I needed.
Wow.
Yeah.
That tells a lot about you as a person. So do you have your family here?
It's just me and my partner who is not Chinese, so we don't speak the same language. My family, they're all back in China.
So when was the last time you visited China?
That was the beginning of 2020, I believe. I was only there for about 10 days, a very short visit.
So it's been a couple of years.
Yeah, it's been a while.
So what do you miss the most about China?
I'd say my friends, my family, and some of the food, which is hard to get in New Zealand.
Cool. I totally get where you're coming from when you talk about food.
Because initially I didn't know much about cooking. That's another big problem. Like back home, I've got mom cook for me. I went to restaurants, takeaway, everything was so cheap. But here it was really hard because I couldn't afford eating out every day. I had to learn how to cook, and that was another journey of learning.
So did you call your mom back in China to learn some time-tested basic recipes from her?
Well, I got a lot of recipe online, and I was exploring myself as well. Yeah, just
Oh, that's nice. Okay, let's talk a little bit about your teaching career. So, did you have any qualifications or experience prior to coming to New Zealand as a teacher?
Well, I graduated as an English major, but I was not a registered teacher back in China. Yeah, but I did have a few years teaching experience though.
So, did that experience get recognized here in New Zealand?
And it does make a difference in my salary when the Ministry of Education evaluates my salary. Yeah.
Oh, that's nice to know, because there are so many aspirants who want to become a teacher, but they hesitate, thinking that they don't have a qualification. But even if they have an experience, that gives them an edge, isn't it?
Well, I believe my experience definitely made myself more confident and comfortable walking into a classroom.
Oh, that's nice to know. That at least gives hope to people who don't have a qualification but still have some experience. So, how was it like to get your first break in teaching? Was it too hard for you to get a teaching job?
Well, while I was studying in university, everybody was talking about there's a big shortage of teachers, so I was pretty confident. But once I graduated and started to apply for jobs, things were not as easy as I imagined. So initially, I was like carefully choosing which schools I want to go and make the applications. But for the first 2-3 months, I heard from there was nothing. Then I got anxious, so I started to apply for pretty much every job that is available there. Still nothing. Then by the end of it, I was like, nah, I need to do something different. So I printed out a pile of my CV and I started to visit all the schools around my neighborhood, just to walk in without any appointment. And I just walk into their office and ask if I could have a quick chat with the principals, just to introduce myself. Even though they don't have any position available, I like to leave my CV there, make an impression, and see if I can get anything. That didn't lead me to get a job, but I got my very first relieving job from one of the local schools. And very soon after that, I got my job.
Oh, that's really good to know. So you mean to say we should take baby steps, take relieving if it comes, and then move up the ladder, and not just sit applying and waiting for a proper full-time teaching job?
Well, definitely. I believe you should take any opportunity you're offered, and often small jobs, small opportunities like that will lead you to something bigger.
Camellia, so what did you study to become a teacher in New Zealand?
I studied this one-year program called Postgraduate Diploma in Teaching.
Did you also have to do some practice teaching while you were studying?
Well, that was included in the program. Yeah.
Okay, so did you get a feel of the school?
Oh, definitely. Yeah,
While
I have a really good taste of the school. In that program I studied, there were 3 big placements, and in each placement you were sent to the different schools and spent at least a week or 2 to get a good picture of what schools are like in New Zealand.
Okay, that's something really good, because for people who have not had a real life experience of a classroom, the qualification that you're talking about, that gives you that experience.
Yes, definitely.
So Camellia ने जो पढ़ाई की न्यूजीलैंड में, उसमें उनको हैंड्स ऑन टीचिंग एक्सपीरियंस मिला, जहाँ उनको क्लासरूम में भी जाकर पढ़ाने की अपॉर्चुनिटी मिली, और एक फीलिंग कैसी होती है क्लासरूम में जाकर बच्चों को के सामने पढ़ाने की, वो एक्सपीरियंस किया उन्होंने. सिर्फ किताबी पढ़ाई नहीं, बल्कि एक हैंड्स ऑन एक्सपीरियंस रहा उनका 1 साल का, जो उन्होंने टीचिंग क्वालिफिकेशन किया, जिससे उनको काफ़ी मदद मिली अपनी actual job mein. So Camellia, you've also taught in China. Was there a big difference between teaching in China and New Zealand?
Well, that's a really good question. Back in China, my teaching was more like academic orientated. So my goal of teaching is to help kids to achieve that score they wanted. So that will be my biggest focus. There were times I feel I was cramming the kids, because that's what we need to do to achieve our goal.
So you mean to say that it's more relaxed here? The
Well,
education system is more relaxed here as compared to China.
because back in China, most of my teaching is exam orientated. I have to focus on the academic performance of my students so we can achieve the goal. The pressure is there because the competition is there. But here in New Zealand, I say we give kids their time and their space so they can take their time to explore their way of learning. Over here, the learning is more student-centered. We have extra time for kids to explore the extracurriculum activities. We learn through inquiries. I'd say that's the biggest difference.
Yeah, I've noticed the same for India as well because while I was teaching, I noticed that experience-based learning is what New Zealand is about and more student-centered rather than teacher-centered.
Exactly.
Yeah. So let's talk about, you've been here for 7 years, you said, and you moved on from visitor visa to resident visa. So tell us about your biggest achievement as an immigrant in New Zealand.
I would say my biggest achievement is to get my full teaching registration, because when you graduated from uni, you get your provisional registration. Then you have to work for 2 to 3 years, approved by your mentor, your principal. That's how you get a full registration. When I only got mine this year recently, so when I got my full registration, I feel my hard work, my teaching, all my skills is truly acknowledged, and that made me feel really proud of myself.
Yeah, you should be. You've done so well in the 7 years. You've achieved so much. You've come a long way.
It was hard for me, especially when I'm speaking a different language. So yeah, so I do feel that was something big for myself.
So Camellia, tell us, how has migration changed you as a person?
Well, there's one thing I've learned in this whole process is that you should never put limit on yourself, because during all this time I met so many challenges and I feel I was never able to sort it out. But then at the end of it, I did it, which makes me feel I am stronger than I thought I was. And yeah, just like I said, don't put a limit on yourself.
That's a very good message. कैमेलिया हमें अभी बता रही थी कि अपने एबिलिटीज़ पे हमें कोई लिमिट नहीं लगानी चाहिए, क्योंकि जब हम अपने आप को लिमिट कर देते हैं तो हमें पता नहीं होता है कि किस हद तक हम कामयाब हो सकते हैं. तो जस्ट थिंक दैट स्काई इज़ द लिमिट, और कोशिश करते रहना चाहिए, मेहनत करते रहना चाहिए, कामयाबी ज़रूर हासिल होगी. And this brings me to the very last but a very important question, Camellia. What is your message to those who want to migrate to New Zealand?
Well, in my experience, I believe New Zealand is a country where the diversity is welcomed. People are friendly. That's part of the reason why I love it so much here. And hard work pays. So as long as you're willing to make the efforts, you will settle down and have your life over here.
Hard work definitely pays. और जैसे कि कैमेलिया ने हमें पहले बताया है कि IELTS का एग्ज़ाम उन्होंने 1 नहीं, 2 नहीं, 3 नहीं, 14 बार दिया और तब जाकर उन्हें वो रिक्वायर्ड स्कोर मिला. उससे ये पता लगता है कि हमें 1, 2, 3, 4 कोशिशों में हार नहीं मान जाना चाहिए. हो सकता है जो आज पॉसिबल नहीं है वो कल को जाकर पॉसिबल हो जाए. हम हर एक एक्सपीरियंस, हर एक अटेम्प्ट से कुछ नया सीखते हैं. थैंक यू सो मच कैमेलिया फॉर जॉइनिंग अस. इट वाज लवली टॉकिंग टू यू. थैंक यू फॉर शेयरिंग योर विजडम. वी रियली अप्रिशिएट योर टाइम.
My pleasure. Thank you, Alia.
Thank you everyone for watching this very first episode of A Home Away from Home. I'm sure you must have gathered a lot of information, and for those of you who are planning to or who are contemplating moving to New Zealand, this would come as a ray of hope. मैं चाहूँगी कि आप अगले हफ्ते भी हमें ज्वाइन करें और देखें कि हम किन से बात करते हैं, कौन हमारे गेस्ट होते हैं जो हमें एक नई उम्मीद देंगे और हमें बताएंगे कि न्यूजीलैंड में आकर बसना, यहाँ पर माइग्रेट करना मुश्किल तो है पर नामुमकिन नहीं है। तो इसी के साथ दिस इज़ आलिया साइनिंग ऑफ। थैंक यू।